So hello everyone, welcome to Suni IAS. I hope all of you must be preparing really well for your upcoming prelims examination, but that is also, we know very well that immediately after the preliminary examination you have to rush up for your mains examination, and optional plays such a vital and important part in your optional examination. So we'll be focusing on that in this lecture. We are going to talk about political science and international relation, and this is going to be a short session on Plato. You must be aware of him, you must have been knowing about him. Plato, who is also called as Aflatun in Hindi and Urdu. So we'll be talking a bit about him. I won't be going too much into detail कि भाई Plato का नाम Plato क्यों था, because he has a very like big chested, broad shoulder, big chested guy, so he was called Plato and all. That is not needed for you, that won't be asked in the examination. We are going to focus on specifically those things which are required for you from the political science perspective. One of the major crises when we are reading about political philosophers, to be precise the ancient Greek philosophers, is we get confused between those who were when they were talking about philosophy and when they were talking about political theory or the theory of the state, or how they want their state to be, how they want their country. Country, the word is pretty new, but just for the safety sake, so that it will make sense to you for how they want to make their country be. Like, so that is the whole idea. And I have studied, I have gone through all the PYQs and lists and everything, and let me assure you that in the civil service examination they are not going to ask you anything too philosophical as far as you are writing political science optional. The moment you will write philosophy optional, I can say okay, the same scholars philosophical side will be asked, but not in this one. Over here the focus will be more on the suggested ways and means of Plato in which he wanted the state to be, the utopia, the eudaimonia and those things. Okay, he here in this lecture therefore will be focusing on those things mostly, but obviously we have to give you a basic idea of who he was, where he was coming from. Okay, so born somewhere around 427 428 427 BCE. Okay, the year exactly is not clear, but somewhere around there he was there during the Peloponnesian War, and he has seen how the Spartan society was living in a far better manner, or far evolved manner than the Athenian society. At that point of time, like, we have our superpowers, we always look towards the superpowers. Okay, sometime we want to be like, okay, हम अमेरिका जैसे क्यों नहीं हैं, sometime we are like, हम चाइना जैसे क्यों नहीं हैं. Okay, और हम चाइना से इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर में क्या सीख सकते हैं, what we can learn from maybe United States, and lot of more stuff, ways and means, or what we can learn about the intrastate trade, what the subcontinent can learn from European Union. So we always look and aspire towards a nearby country, nearby association around the world in the 21st century also. So similarly, the ways, the times in which Plato was living, being an Athenian, he was looking toward the Spartan society, and because Sparta has also won few battles against Athens, so he was looking towards them, and not only him but his guru, his teacher Socrates was also looking towards the Spartan ways, but not that much. Plato was far more oriented towards, influenced by the Spartan way of life. Acha. So that's some basic information. Now what you need to know is most of the writings which of Plato which you have to read from the perspective of Socrates. Now who is Socrates? Socrates is someone who is also called in Hindi, Urdu, in Indian languages as Sukrat. Okay, what he is called? Sukrat. Now writings. Now Socrates throughout his life never left anything in writing. Okay, he kind of hated writing. He was more of the orientation, or he was of the opinion that discussing things to people, talking to people is the way forward. In the sense that if I have a direct one-to-one conversation with you, okay, and we'll debate on a topic, okay, I'm talking about in term of debate. If we debate on a topic, the overall outcome of our discussion will be more worthy than me writing a note and then discussing it on my own. Okay, so that is the basic idea. Now Socrates is famous for this, that he has never written anything, but his dialogues, his conversation with his pupil, with other people in the society has been great, okay, and remarkable. Now Socrates is someone, because of his behavior or because of his mannerisms, he was not really liked in the society. And then the few steps he took in the society, that is continuously talking to the youngsters in the Athenian society and telling them that how they need to take a rational approach and keep on questioning the authorities. And when Socrates was saying about authorities, he used to say about all the authorities within the family, that is your parents, to the authority of the government. Okay, one has to question about anyone. Now just imagine in the 21st century also, if someone is there who is asking you कि भाई सबको question करो, question all the authority around you, then what will happen? Okay, such people are not liked. Okay, ज़्यादा जो लोग question करते हैं, they are not liked in the society. That is something you should be aware of. So what happened with Socrates? A case was filed, hearing was started, and he was given a capital punishment, and he was executed by making him drink hemlock, which was a poison. Now Plato saw all this thing in front of him, all these things happened, and then he had to escape for his life. Okay, he was in hiding for a very long time because the Athenian society didn't like him. Then later on, after few years, when the issues got resolved, then he came back. When he came back, he established a institute of his own called as Academy. Okay, Academy was the first place of learning, institutionalized place of learning. Okay, you should keep this thing in mind. Academy was the first institutionalized place of learning, and he started teaching there a bit of philosophy, a bit of mathematics, and in mathematics also his main focus was geometry. Geometry was something which Plato gave great emphasis on, and philosophy was also important for him. Now back in the day in the Athenian society, right now, like everyone knows that engineering is the talk of the town. Okay, whether you are doing something in AI or you are doing something in metallurgy, it's ultimately all AI engineering only. But back in the day, engineering was the secondary sciences. The important idea, the important thing, the main education system was in and around philosophy. So philosophy and also mathematics, empirical modeling, and all these things were very important. When I am saying empirical modeling, I am not talking about current day empirical modeling, basically geometry and those kind of ideas. Okay, so this is the society where he was living in. Now many a time he is also called as, that's why what you have to remember about him. So let's discuss what we are going to discuss. We are going to discuss in this lecture Plato's Republic and his theory of form. Plato's Republic and his theory of form. Nothing more, nothing less. We are not going to focus on every nitty-gritties. We are not in this lecture going to, that is for foundation course, that is for more detailed discussion. Just to give you a basic idea that if in a conversation, when you are either starting your preparation or if you are in a conversation with someone, you should have some basic idea whose Plato was, how he influenced our society, what are his influences even in 21st century. How can you say that look, Plato was someone whose influence is visible in the 21st century also, and what are those influences? So we are going to focus on those things mostly in this lecture. Fine. So Plato's Republic and his theory of forms are the basic concepts which we are going to discuss in this lecture. Okay, let's proceed then. I kind of gave you a basic brief biography, okay, of who he was, where he was living. Okay, now what I have to tell you also, biography I kind of gave you, and we also discussed a bit of his overview of his philosophical idea. So what was his philosophical idea? Now Plato is famous for his theory of knowledge, okay, his theory of forms. Plato talked about metaphysics. Plato talked about what are the things which are active or which are important in the field of ethics, metaphysics, then epistemology. Epistemology is basically the study of knowledge, or basically the theory of study of knowledge is called epistemological studies. Okay, so that is something also he talked about. Let me write this thing for you. So he was working in the field of ethics, metaphysics, epistemology. Okay. Now, most of what we know about Plato comes from his various writings. Okay, Plato wrote a whole book called as Republic. Now, the most important, the most seminal of work of his work is called as Republic. Now, with this name, you will have in your opinion that in this book, he must have been talking about a country where an elected leader must be there, but that is not the case. Okay, Republic is not a book about a country or democracy or elected leadership or election, nothing. It is a book which is about justice. Okay, it is a book about justice. Republic is a word which was a Latin in origin and was later on given to this text, not initially. Okay, so when we are going to talk about Republic, you again need to know some more important things, and that important thing is, I'll explain you here itself, is basically the talk on justice. So one of the prime concern, not only of the time of Plato, but since then, even now, is what is justice. And based on that, new questions will be asked, that what is a just society. Okay, that is a very logical question, that is a very important question which was asked by Plato, or discussed by Plato, I should say. Now, as I have told you that in his writing, he uses Socrates. Now, in his writing, it is all written by Plato, but it is written as if Socrates is the one who is the main character of his writing. All the writings in Republic of Plato are in dialogue form. Okay, as if a character, Socrates, is talking to someone. Fine. So that is the pretext. That is something you should know. So there is, in this discussion, Socrates, suppose this person is Socrates. Okay, so he will be discussing what is justice. Okay, what is justice? He has a very simple doubt, what is justice? He is confused about it, and therefore what he will do now, Socrates, the character Socrates, is going to ask question from various of his students and the people around him. Okay, so the first person he asked question was Cephalus. Okay, now what Cephalus say? Now he says that, look, justice is very simple. Justice means telling truth and paying your debt. Okay, basically it's focusing on that you live a honest life. That is what he is suggesting. Cephalus is saying justice is paying your debt and telling truth in the society. Don't lie to anyone, don't make it worse for you by getting into debt, taking loan from people and don't returning it. So that was the idea when he was asked. Then he asked another person, Polemarchus, that you tell me what is justice for you. Everyone will have a perspective. So Polemarchus is someone who is saying that for him justice is doing good to the friends and bad to the enemies. Okay, so he is very clear that he is taking justice in the form of loyalty actually. that who are with me, I am good to them. Who are against me, I am bad to them. So Polemarchus is coming with the justice thing in the form of loyalty. Now, the third person whom he asked was Thrasymachus. Okay, Thrasymachus. Now, what he is going to do? He said that justice is basically about society, and in the society, those who are powerful are going to decide what is justice. Okay, it is all in the society. In the society, the most powerful people will decide what is justice. What is good for them will be just, what is not good for them will be unjust or unjust. Okay, so he explained justice also as a tool of the elites, in a way one can say. Okay, and this is also something which we always see in our present society and day in society, that people blame it on people, that look, justice kisko milta hai, only those who are powerful, or justice is given to, or only those people get justice who can afford it. So those ideas come from there. Okay, so that is one idea. Now, next idea was given by Glaucon, Glaucon. Glaucon was also there, and he was asked. So he was of the opinion that you behave in a just manner. Okay, people only behave just because of their selfish interest. Okay, because of their political benefits, because they hope that there is something to gain in the society, and that is why people behave justly. Okay, then there was another person whose name was Mentus. What he said? Mentus stated that what you are considering justice is not justice. What you considered basically unjust is actually just. So that was his opinion. So you get all these opinions about justice. Okay. Now, finally, Socrates had to, or he had one by one argument with everyone. Now, he rejected everyone's idea. He outlined that how loyalty, or the way loyalty is used to explain justice, is not a correct thing. He also said that look, even saying that only the powerful can have justice, that is also impossible, that is wrong. So all these things were discussed, that is fine. But he also had to come with own ideas. And when Socrates was asked what is justice for him, okay, in the Plato's writing, so justice he explained in the form of happiness, good, okay, and not only for an individual but for the whole society. Okay, so the ideal city state, okay, he explained justice to be a situation which he explained through the word eudaimonia, and he said that in a eudaimonia everyone will be happy, and then it will be justice served to all, and it will be a just society. It will be a just society. Now, question comes from here. This was just a basic pretext which is required to be known. Now, question comes from here is that okay, fine, you made a place where everyone is happy. So, happiness prevails. Good. This society where happiness prevails is called as eudaimonia. Just give me a moment, everyone. Eudaimonia. That is also fine. Now, with this eudaimonia also there is a lot of problem. What is the problem with eudaimonia now? How you are going to achieve it? How it will be achieved? It becomes a question. how it will be achieved. So Plato went on to explain how it will be achieved. Okay, he said that it will be achieved in a ideal state, and an ideal state has to be made. How it will be made? It will be made by taking steps. First of all, there has to be appointment of a philosopher king. There has to be appointment of a philosopher king. Okay. There has to be a system of education. And when needs be, there has to be a commune. These were some of his ideas. But it was not as if that he came up with these ideas out of nowhere. Okay, out of hat निकाल के नहीं लाए थे वही ideas. He had proper reasoning for coming up with these ideas, and that is something we have to discuss now. Okay, so I kind of explained you the what republic is and objective and main themes of the republic. It is of concerning justice. The concept of justice at the individual and the state is also something we discussed. Okay, few more things which you need to know in this point is this. He said that look, justice exists at the individual level and also at the state level. How justice will exist at the individual level? He said that the individual soul has three parts. Individual soul has three parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. Reason, spirit, and appetite. Now, if there is a optimum balance, there is a stability between all these three at the individual level. Let me write it for you. Individual reason, spirit, okay, spirit, appetite. Okay. Now, if reason, spirit, and appetite are at equal footing, okay, there is a balance, then the individual will be just on his or her own level, on their own level. Now he explained, or he expanded this very idea onto state. Always remember that Plato is also someone who has stated, or who has famously argued, that state is nothing but individual writ large. Okay, state is nothing but individual writ large. That is where it is all coming from. State is individual writ large. Okay, so you keep this thing in mind. Now, this is one idea. Now, next point which you need to understand over here is how it will be applied in the state level, the individual idea. So, just there were three levels here. On the state, he said, there has to be a ruler, there has to be a soldier, and there has to be producer. Okay, and they are in line with these ideas. The ruler is the one who has to be the reasonable one, because they have the responsibility of everyone else. Okay, the soldier is the spirited one, and that is even not required to be explained further. I hope you are already aware the soldier is the one who is the spirited one, and the producer has to have the appetite. to keep on growing, the produce. And produce doesn't only means agriculture produce means material gain also of the society. Okay, so these were needed to be aligned. Okay, so keep this thing in mind. Chaliye. Now where these things will be done? So it will be done in a ideal state. It will only happen in an ideal state. Now who will be a reasonable ruler? First of all, that is the most important thing. Who should rule? So the ruler has to be a philosopher king, whom he explained as, or he gave the very word philosopher king. He was criticized also for saying this. He, or many scholars later on in the modern times, also kept on criticizing Plato as someone who was arguing that king has to be a philosopher. That means some people said that Plato was kind of putting himself out, that he should be made the king of the Athenian society or Athenian state. But frankly, as per the written record, that is not the case. And you can be aware that although he suggested there should be a philosopher king, okay, to run the ideal state, he was never suggesting his own name. Now what is and why is philosopher king has to be there? So look, he evolved a whole education system, and it was already expected that philosopher king will evolve over education through he will come from a commune. He will turn after an education system which will last at least for 50 years, and then he will come to power. Okay, a philosopher king will not have a family. Okay, so basically a philosopher king will not have the responsibilities, okay, societal constraints or the family bondage. Okay, now it's a basic notion which is visible even now, that we surely do this. We consider that if there is a leader who doesn't have a family, okay, they are usually considered to be non-corrupt. Okay, right from the you will see from left and right and everywhere, all the parties, wherever there is a leader who is doesn't have a family around, okay, he is considered to be uncorruptible or non-corrupt or unbiased also. Because the basic notion is that why the hell that person will get involved into corruption? What is there? Why? Like, if there is a family, one can be a corrupt, because they have to fulfill the requirements of the family. But that is not the case here. Okay, so that is a scene. So one of the very beneficial point of philosopher king is that now philosopher king is considered to be the one who is capable to understand what is good. Okay, so the whole concept of good is also needed to be known, and only the philosopher king has the two mandatory thing which is needed to understand what is good. Number one, the education he has, and number second, he is aware of all the constraints of the society. This is a very simple logic, that if you have more information, your decision making will be better, isn't it? Yes. The number इसको mathematical equation ले लो. Okay, if there is a mathematical equation, okay, nth order mathematical equation, if you are solving, suppose you are solving an inequality, you will see what? As and when the number of constraint will increase, as and when the number of equations increase, then the chances or the exact solution is more. Okay, so that is what is happening in the society also. He is the one who is on the top. He is the one with the maximum amount of constraints, which he has the knowledge of the constraints of the society, and he also has the proper apt education, and therefore he is most capable of deciding what is good for the society at large. Fine, so that you have to know. Now this is the idea of philosopher king, and you don't have to go through beyond this, the basic idea. So yeah, the state which he will build will be called a ideal city state. Now let's move to the next idea, that is theory of forms. Now I hope you must have been aware of allegory of the cave. Okay, if you are not, I will tell you, but I hope so you must be aware. Okay, so what is theory of form? Now you might, in your personal life, you might have heard of a very famous word called as platonic love. Okay, so platonic relationship, platonic love, all these things, huh? So all this actually comes from this theory of form only. What Plato is saying is that, look, this world, this place where we are living, this is not the actual reality. Okay, the world where we are living is not the actual reality, it's a shadow of a reality. The reality is somewhere else, it's in another realm. The reality is somewhere else, it's in the another realm, and whole of our life, our only aim is to reach that reality. Now if you'll see, if you'll try to compare, this sounds very similar to the various ideas propounded in various faiths around the world. Whether the Buddhist idea of enlightenment, okay, or a Brahminical idea, or somewhat Hindu idea also of Swarg and Narg, or heaven and hell, or Dozak and Jannat, all sounds very similar, that you have to go from place 1 to place 2, from place A to place B. Plato is also talking in that term only now, because what he is saying, that where we are living is not the real reality, it's the shadow of reality, and we have to achieve the reality. Okay, now he is saying now that the real world is the world of forms. Okay, now I have a podium standing kept next to me. Okay, so Plato will say that this is not the perfect podium. All around the world there are innumerous number of podiums, or a laptop is kept on the top of podium. So Plato will say the laptop you have is not the perfect laptop. There are so many laptops, all the laptops want to be the perfect laptop, and there is one perfect laptop which is somewhere. Okay, which might Steve Jobs will be using up in the sky. उसी को मिला है और किसी को नहीं. ठीक है, but that's the basic idea he's coming from. Okay, so as an individual, you are a shadow of your own reality, and your whole life what you are trying to do, isn't it that you are trying to be better with each passing day? Yes, you are, and that is what you are doing. You are trying to become better, you are trying to become efficient. Basically you are trying to go near and near and near to your perfect self, your perfect form, and that is what Plato is saying through theory of forms. So let me put this thing on map, it will make more sense. Okay, you are somewhere here. Okay, and there is a perfect you here. This is realm of ideas. Okay, all your life you are trying to move from realm of shadow to the realm of ideas. This is what you are trying to do. This is the true reality. Fine. So you will see many a time theory of form is also called as theory of ideas and all. Fine. Achha. Now if this is the whole story, then what is this allegory of cave? So there is a story in Greek society, and which goes like this, that back in the day there was a cave. In the cave there were three men who were whose hands and legs and their mouth, everything was tied. So they can't speak, they cannot move, they were lying inside a cave. And from the beginning of times. So they don't know any other form. All they know is that they are lying there. And what they were seeing, there was a small gap, small hole. Okay. And through that hole, all they can see was a shadow of people who were roaming outside the cave. Through that hole, they can see shadow of people who were roaming outside the cave. So for those three men, that was the reality. That was all there. कुछ और नहीं था. That shadow was their reality. That shadow was their reality. Then one of them, one fine day, somehow managed to untie himself, and then he went outside the cave. When he went outside the cave, he saw, there is a whole world. There is light. These people are not only shadow, they are real beings, and they can speak. And there is another reality. There is something else itself, and then this something else is far better. In front of this something else, the old reality of his stands nowhere. Doesn't make any sense to him. He immediately rushes back to the other two people, untie them, and tells them that, look, what I have seen outside has been exceptional. Come with me, let's go outside. The Greek story went on after this and says that the other two men killed him. Yeah, this is the part of the story which is usually not told, but the whole Greek tale goes like this: the other two men killed him, saying that he is trying to turn us into something else. He is trying to do something improper for us. Now this is a tale which actually explains Plato's perception of what happened to Socrates in the Athenian society. So I have just told you in the starting of the lecture only that Socrates was someone who was involved in all these discourses, and he was eulogizing the youth. He was telling the youth that you should keep on questioning the society. If there is something wrong, you should not be afraid of the hierarchies in the society. Okay, and you should bluntly, straightforward, say to people, if someone is wrong, he or she is wrong. Doesn't really matter if it's their parents, it's their government, whosoever it is. And the reaction was, or the outcome was, the Socrates was forced to take hemlock and die. Now Plato is saying that the Athenian society was in the cave, and it was Socrates who was able to untie himself and went outside and was trying to come back and explain the Athenian people that they are not able to see the reality. And the Athenian society reacted, and he was forced to take hemlock. Fine. So this is the whole allegory of cave, and allegory of cave's connectivity to the Socrates idea that you should be aware of. Okay. Now let's move forward. Explain you this idea, the explanation of theory of forms, allegory of significance I have done. Now let's talk about the third idea, the third point, which is relationship between the world of forms and the material world. Now, material world and the world of forms. So, in the way we are living, Socrates or Plato, through the character Socrates, will say, is the imperfect world. Is the imperfect world. And ultimately we have to go to the theory of, or the realm of forms, okay, realm of ideas. Now the next idea which we have to go through is the, for your examination purpose specifically, is the critique of the theory of forms. Now the biggest and the most important critique of theory of form came from the most famous student of Plato, Aristotle himself. Now you need to be aware that Aristotle is someone who called the Platonic idea, or this whole theory of form, the Plato's idea, to be incomplete. Now you also should know that Aristotle is not someone who will outrightly reject his teacher's whole conceptuality, his theory, but he rejected this idea that there is something else outside this world. This the whole talks of the other realm is something which Aristotle rejected. Aristotle rejected this idea, and he became the biggest critique, okay, of Plato for that matter itself. There is a very famous mural in Vatican City, if you'll go in the one of the churches over there. I'm forgetting the name of the church, but in one of those churches, and it's a very it's next to the Basilica itself, the papal church. Next to it, there's another church in which, if you'll see, on one of the wall, the mural is the name of the mural is School of Athens. Okay, School of Athens, and in this you will see there will be a old Plato and young Aristotle in a conversation, in a dialogue with each other, coming from one side. And in this picture you will see that it has been made in such a manner that Plato's finger is pointing upwards and Aristotle's finger is pointing downward. That upward and downward is actually the symbol of their theories, their ideas. On one hand, while Plato kept on saying that look, there is another realm up there where we have to go, which is the reality. On the other hand, Aristotle was someone who was saying that look, I am not questioning your idea that we have to improve. I am not questioning your idea that we have to make eudaimonia. I am not questioning those things. I am just saying that we don't have to go anywhere. This is the very reality which is there and which will be there. So we have to improve for the sake of this reality only. That's it. So the reality in which we are living is the only reality. That is what Aristotle is saying. The painting is made by a very famous medieval Italian painter. His name was Raphael. Okay. So School of Athens by Raphael is the painting. You can Google it. You will find it. Okay. So that is one thing. Another criticism for this theory of form is lack of empirical data. Lack of empirical data. That is another issue which you should be aware of. Okay. Chalo. Now, after this, we should go on the next idea, next point. That is the connection between the Republic and theory of form. Now, this is also very important, and we'll take it one by one. Connection between the text, Plato's text, Republic, and the idea he propounded, that is theory of form, is something we have to discuss. Now, the first point which we should know is about how the theory of form informed Plato's ideas on the ideal city-state. So what I have explained, and I hope you must have got a bit of idea. A few minutes back I have mentioned two things. First of all, I said that Plato has famously argued state is the individual writ large. And secondly, I have shown that how he explained justice on the individual level and then kind of extrapolated the whole idea on the state's level. Okay, and that's why he connected the reason to the king, okay, and the appetite to the producer and the spirit to the warrior, okay, or the soldier. Now over here also he'll be doing the same thing. Just like he explained that for an individual or for even for a material good, there is a other realm where that perfect material good is there or perfect individual is there. Similarly, for the whole state, there is a utopia, there was a eudaimonia that is in the other realm. Okay. And that is what his idea or theory of forms informed Plato's idea of ideal state. That there is the ideal state and it could be achieved if you have the correct knowledge. Okay. If one has the correct knowledge, if the philosopher king has the correct knowledge and he is able to dispense it among the people in the state, city state, then that city state will achieve the ideal state and it will become eudaimonia. Okay. Now, second point, the philosopher king's role in assessing the world of forms. I've just explained this thing, that to attain the knowledge, it's the role of philosopher king comes into picture. Because we have discussed few minutes back that he is the only one who has knowledge of all the constraints, who has the required apt information, knowledge tool to take the society up. Fine. So that is something. Now the third idea, okay, this much is done, the philosophy. Now after this we can directly move to the scholars or the later scholars who went on to analyze Plato's work and have reaped a lot from his ideas. Now there is a famous scholar, Needleship, who even went to the extent of saying that the whole of the Western or the Western philosophy, it is usually said the whole of Western philosophy is a footnote of Plato's ideas or Plato's theories, but frankly he was not talking about whole of Western theories, he was talking about the European ideas, okay, the European thing and not the whole Western world. That's a difference in that. Basically he was talking in the 18th century, 19th century, and at that time you can say such a thing would have been true, but now the Western world is far bigger than just the European society. So who are the scholars in the modern times? Okay, somewhere around in the 17th, 18th and 19th and 20th century, all these period in past 400 years or 450 years, who have been influenced by Plato. There are a lot of them, almost all of them are influenced from Plato in one way or another. Some have analyzed him, almost all of them have analyzed him, some on the positive side, some on the negative side. Many of them have taken some of the ideas of Plato. Okay, many of them, while rejecting him also, have learnt what not to include in their ideas. So that is what the importance of Plato is. Now, who are the scholars about whom we have to discuss? So we have to discuss for scholars like Emmanuel Kant, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, okay, George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, that's single guy's name, you might be knowing him just as Hegel, Karl Popper, Aris Murdoch, and John Rawls. These are some of scholars. I will tell you in this lecture how they were influenced one by one. So let's start with the very first name, that is Emmanuel Kant. Okay, Emmanuel Kant a Prussian scholar who was in a way an idealist, whose main idea were focusing on developing the moral and ethical sensibilities of our society, okay, in the 18th century. Now he came up with a concept called as categorical imperative, and now this is his most important idea, and it is important for you to remember what he said here. Now let me explain the categorical imperative first, and then it will make more sense. So categorical imperative means those ideas which are implemented in whole of the society at once. There is no if and no buts. So for example, let me give you an example. Suppose, suppose a question is asked, that if there is a kid, there is a child, 10, 11, 12-year old, very poor child, he doesn't have anything to eat, and he has stolen 2 chapatis or 2 pieces of bread from a restaurant. Is it acceptable? Is it moral or not? Acceptable, illegal, legal chhod dijiye. Is it moral or not? You might say that look, that kid hasn't eaten in 2 days. Under these circumstances, it's the responsibility of the state or the society to fulfill his basic needs. Society cannot under these circumstances. Then again, if the child has stolen just 2 chapatis or 2 pieces of bread or a loaf of bread, it's fine. But up to what extent it's fine? Suppose if the society transform itself into this mannerism only, and everyone then went on to start, instead of doing anything, कि भाई हर 2 दिन बाद हम चपातियाँ चोरी करके खा लेंगे, there will be a lot of people in the society who will be like, okay fine, it's better way of this only. Okay, so categorical imperative came up with this logic. Then whenever you are in a moral dilemma, you are unable to decide what has to be done, what you should do is you should extrapolate that individual categorization or individual action on the whole of the society. If the outcome is still positive, then it's ethical and moral and you should do it. If not, then it's immoral. Pretty simple, pretty easy. So if you apply that particular idea in this particular case, that in case of one kid it's fine, but tomorrow if the whole society started doing this only, it becomes the new way of having meals कि restaurant से चोरी कर लो. So फिर that's a wrong thing, and that is what categorical imperatives talks about. Okay, that there are some ideas, some principle, and these are some unconditional and moral absolute principles which have to be followed by all. Okay, now you need to understand that this whole idea of extrapolating it from the individual level to the larger level is something Emmanuel Kant learned from Plato only. Okay, as well as this whole idea that to apply it on all the human beings, that all its idea is also something which he learned from Plato's way of working it out. Fine. So that is influence on him. Now the next scholar about whom we have to discuss is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Now what Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the French scholar, said? Okay, so mind it, first of all, Rousseau is one of the first prominent authority on direct democracy in modern times. He was someone who was back in 1767, 1768, immediately after the Treaty of Paris in 1763, was telling in the French society that democracy is the way forward, and he was a supporter of direct democracy. It is said that Rousseau's ideas made the foundational block for the French Revolution of 1789 also. So Rousseau is coming from that point. Now, Rousseau is someone who came up with the idea of his idea of social contract. And also came up with the idea of general will. Okay. The idea of social contract, I hope you are aware of. It's a very basic idea that every individual has to let some of their rights go in return of certain protections which are provided by the state. Okay. And for example, you have assured the state that you will not beat the people on the roadside, and in return the state assures you that it will make sure that other people will also not beat you on the roadside. So that's a transitory relationship, a contract you have done with the state. Fine. Now, this idea was first of all evolved by Thomas Hobbes, but later on Russo evolved it more and added some democratic flavor into it, as in everyone will be doing it on their own, as in if the state is unable to handle the situation, then what are the ways out given to the people. So these were some of the ideas. But he also came up with another concept called as the concept of general will. And this concept of general will is based on utilitarianism, that is greatest good for the greatest number of people. That is, in a society, if the maximum number of people are getting benefited by something, that thing should be done, even if it causes some difficulty to few of the people. Okay, so this idea of general will is also in most of the cases explained, as well as social contract is explained as something where Russo got influence from Plato. Okay, so you keep that thing in mind. Now, what else you need to know about Russo? That is enough. Now, the next scholar about whom you have to understand is Hegel. Now, Hegel is someone who is not taught in that much detail in your political science syllabus. The reason is twofold. First of all, it's really difficult to understand Hegel's ideas, and secondly, questions are not yet being asked in direct terms from Hegel's and related topic to him. Hegel is always used as a precursor to understand Karl Marx logic, and with that idea only Hegel is taught. But let me tell you a few more things of basic idea of Hegel here itself. Hegel came up with this idea of dialectical idealism. Dialectical idealism. Now, what he was saying? He is saying that Hegel is saying that in our society we see that there is always some struggle going on. Even in now, there is a struggle going between. We have till between 1949 and 1990 we saw a Cold War between Europe and Soviet Union. That was actually an ideological war between the capitalism and communism. Actually, it's evolved from there. And one can say that society have always been fighting or struggling between two ideas. Even in present day, कुछ नहीं होगा तो क्या होगा, अमीर और गरीब की लड़ाई होगी. There is always a struggle between the rich and the poor, haves and the have-nots. Okay, so that the struggle between haves and the have-nots is not actually a struggle, and this is just one example. There is a lot many more struggles going on. So the struggle between haves and the have-nots is not a struggle between two people or two communities or few people with lot of money and few people with no money. It's basically a struggle of two ideas. Okay, two ideas. So Hegel is saying that whatever is happening in our society, okay, whatever is happening in our society is basically happening through ideas. The history which we are living in, the history which we have, is basically made up by this continuous struggle of ideas. So what he is saying that at the essence of this whole world, essence of the world is in ideas. Isn't it the same thing which Plato also argued when he said that ultimately what we will get, where we will go, is the realm of ideas. Okay, realm of forms is basically the realm of ideas, where the perfect ideas are there. So that struggle is also happening in our society from the Platonic idea. So he got influence from there. Now, let's talk about another scholar who came in the 20th century. His name was Karl Popper. Now, Karl Popper is very well known for calling out Plato to be the first totalitarian. Now, Popper is a scholar of the 20th century who has seen the impact of Nazi and Farsi idea in Europe. And therefore, he will see that in 1950s and when he will start writing, he will call out Plato also for discussing the system of commune, and a commune of wife and a commune of children, and then letting the philosopher king become the absolute ruler. Okay, so philosopher king as the absolute ruler. So that you have to understand where his criticism is basically coming from. Okay. Now, next scholar which we have to discuss is basically Aris Murdoch. Aris Murdoch is actually a novelist. She got the Booker's Prize in 1978. Her writings are basically oriented towards the ethics, okay, ethical conundrums, okay, and the question of what is good. What is good? So you will see in one of her very famous writing, The Sovereign of Good. Okay, The Sovereign of Good. She went on to get influence from the idea of good which was propounded by Plato. And in many of her writing, he used the Platonic idea of there has to be a absolute perfect idea of good. As I explained, Plato was saying that there has a perfect idea of everything. So there has to be a perfect idea of good. So she said that there is also a perfect idea of good. And this is what everyone is looking for. And her writings basically shows this in public. So that you have to know. Now, another scholar and one of the most prominent scholar of the later part of the 20th century, John Rawls, who in 1971 wrote a book called as Theory of Justice, in which he explained justice in a manner just as was done back in the times. But this time he explained justice in the 20th century, in the second half of the 20th century, as fairness. And to do this, he propounded two new concepts called as the original position and veil of ignorance. Original position and veil of ignorance. Now you need to be aware here, what was this idea? So very, very simple idea. So he himself gave this example that if we just take a unborn fetus in the mother's womb and for a fraction of a second consider that fetus to be mentally completely capable and ask that fetus to take a decision on some issue, global concern or some issue. Now, since the fetus doesn't know whether he or she is going to be which gender, the fetus doesn't know whether he or she is going to be in a rich family or a poor family, or where he is going to be on Earth or some other alien planet, we don't know. Now, in those circumstances, the decision which will be made by the fetus will be unbiased and completely neutral. He said that this was happening because fetus is in its original position, that is the original position from where it all started, and also they have a veil of ignorance. आंखों के आगे एक पर्दा पड़ा हुआ है. They have a veil of ignorance. So they don't know, they subconsciously also they don't calculate whether the particular action is good or bad for themselves. Okay, and therefore they will be unbiased. Okay. Now these ideas are again something which is highly influenced from the Platonic idea or Platonic writings in Republic. They are again talking about keeping someone in the other realm. They are again talking about being unbiased and completely neutral. These are the very ideas on which the philosopher king was also based. Okay. So even in the most modern of the times, remember this book is written in 1971, and basically it is, even now it is considered one of the most substantial text which supports the argument for affirmative action. Okay? So you should be aware of this. So we have discussed in this lecture not only about some basic ideas of Plato. We have discussed in this lecture not only about his writing in Plato and his concept of justice and theory of form, but we have also discussed almost somewhere around 5 to 6 scholars who were influenced from Plato's ideas and how they inculcated the Platonic idea or Plato's idea in their own work. Now I hope this class was helpful for you. I'll make sure that whatever I have spoken just now will also be provided to you in a PDF format, and the link to that PDF will be down in the description, so you can download that thing. Okay, and let's catch up in the next lecture, so talking about someone else, some maybe Aristotle or Machiavelli or someone else who played a vital role in the way and the means we have and the kind of life we live. So thanks a lot for attending the lectures. Let's catch up in the next lecture. Thank you.